Hi, I would like to welcome everyone to our event, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Career, Impact, and Replacement in the Supreme Court of the United States. I am Luisa Ramagem from the University of Brasilia Students' Law Review, and our goal is to disseminate legal scholarship, to encourage research skills in students, and to bring internationally relevant legal issues for law students.
Hello, I'm Fernanda Oberman from Vinculum, a project developed by students of University of Brasilia as well. And our goal is to discuss career and professional development and to encourage students to enter in the legal market. It's such an honor to be here today with such distinguished guests discussing this relevant matter. We're here today with Cristina Neves and Professor Mohamed Arafa.
So Cristina Neves is a partner at Lacombe e Neves da Silva Advogados Associados, has an LL.M from the University of California, Berkeley, and is the vice president of Elas Pedem Vista, a group of female attorneys from Brasilia whose goal is to contribute to the legal debate of sensitive matters from our society. Meanwhile, Professor Mohamed Arafa is a SJD, professor of law at Alexandria University Faculty of Law located in Egypt, and an adjunct professor of law at Cornell Law School. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you both so much. And to start our discussion, Cristina will open our panel with the following subject: Ruth Ginsburg trajectory and legacy. The floor is yours, Cristina.
Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you, Luisa. It's an honor to be here debating Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm a fan. I met her while doing my LL.M at Berkeley. In the books. Unfortunately, I hadn't the opportunity of actually meeting her. It will be actually a dream come true. And in Elas Pedem Vista, we have a project of taking her documentary to law schools. Actually, we even did a exhibition of the documentary in the UNB Law School. It was really nice. We had Professor Janaína was there to debate with us. And it was really enriching to be part of this experience. In Elas Pedem Vista, we're also, we did an exhibition also in the Supreme Court here in Brazil. So it was actually a huge moment. It was the first time the documentary was exhibited in Brazil. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a huge part of our project. We see her as a reference. And for me personally, for her, she's a mark in my life. There's a after and a before, getting to know and study Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So it's such an honor, and I'm very happy to be here. And I wanted to congratulate the student body, the Law Review, Vinculum for this event, because it's very important to have female examples as Ginsburg. And being a lawyer for more than 10 years now, I lack those examples as a woman, and finding her was, it was very interesting to having a woman that achieved so much, and with her kindness and with her education. So I want to talk about her, giving a little brief of her life, talking about the challenges that she had to overcome. And I want to bring some cases that she was part of as a lawyer and in the Supreme Court. So let me just see my time, because since I'm a fan, I get really excited about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I can talk forever, and let's not make that happen. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was a daughter of two Jewish immigrants from Brooklyn. She always kept her accent throughout her life. So if you're interested in accents in English, you can actually see her Brooklyn accent, and it's really nice. Even when she was older, she always kept it. And in the movie, The Supreme, that it's more Hollywood style that tells her life, you can see the actress, she really puts the Brooklyn accent. So her mom was a very big influence in her life, even though she died on the same week that she graduated from high school. But her mom, even though they had a limited time together, her mom taught her one of her biggest lessons in life, that you need education to move forward. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg was always the first student in every places that she were. So she was actually the valedictorian of her class when she graduated from high school. and she had the best grades. She went to Cornell University, and she graduated there as the highest ranked female in her class. In Cornell, she met her husband, Martin Ginsburg. This is where she gets her last name. So her original name is actually John Ruth Bader. And so she met Martin Ginsburg, and she mentions through her biographies that it was really great for her meeting a guy that actually was interested in her intelligence, in the things that she thought, not only on her looks. And we're talking about the 1950, 1960s where they meet. So it was actually something very uncommon at the time that you had actually women, you know, seeking higher education. So after graduating from Cornell, Martin, he went to law school, Harvard Law School, and a year before that, after that, Ginsburg, she also enrolled in Harvard Law. She was one of 9 women in a classroom of 500 men at the time in Harvard. And on her second year, Martin's third year, he was diagnosed with cancer. So in that moment, she had to study for her and for him. And he graduated with honors. She was in the law review of Harvard Law Review, which in the United States, it's only for the best ranked students. So she, even though with a sick husband and she had a baby at a time, she managed to be selected to the law review. And after that, Martin got a job in New York, so they had to move. He just had cancer, they had a small baby, she was a woman, so they had to move. So she had to transfer herself to Columbia Law, and she was the first woman ever to be into the major law firms at the time, Harvard Law and Columbia Law. She was the first woman to be in both of them. When she was in Harvard, she was in the law review there, and then when she was in Columbia, she was also in the law review there. And after she graduated, it's very common in the United States, and Professor Mohamed, please correct me, for the best students to get clerkships with the justices from, you know, the Supreme Court, sure, especially from the major top 10 law schools. It really matters in that aspect where you're studying and the rank that you're in your class, because then you get a great recommendation to go to a clerkship in the Supreme Court or with, you know, district judges, and also in law firms. Differently from Brazil, the law students, they do like summer internships. They don't do internships like we do here in Brazil. It's a little bit different. And in those summer internships, they have the opportunity to getting to know the law firms. And even though Ginsburg did that, was very well evaluated when she was there, when she graduated, she wouldn't get a job at any law firm. And she even said that it was really hard for her because she was a woman, she was a mother, and she was Jewish. And in Brazil, since we don't have a huge Jewish community, especially in Brasilia, it's something that it's not really palpable for us. It's something we don't see as the way the United States sees it, especially at her time. She graduated on the 60s. So it's a huge thing still. And back in the time, it was also very big. So she had 3 factors that it was hard for her to get a job in a law firm. And also she was recommended for Justice Frankfurter at the Supreme Court of the United States, and he did not hire her. So she had great recommendations from the Supreme Court, from her law professors, but she wasn't able to get a clerkship at the Supreme Court of the United States. So with a lot of effort, she had a few professors that actually talked and called some judges. She got a clerkship with Judge Palmier at the District Court of the Southern District of New York. And she stayed in that position for 2 years. And some interesting facts that I love about Ginsburg is how she was prepared for everything that she did. So before she started as a clerk, she read a lot of the decisions and votes from that judge, so she would understand the way he So I think this is a great example of Ginsburg, that everything she'd done, she was prepared for it. She really studied, she really put her energy into that. And after that moment, when she was her clerkship with Justice Palmier, she did a research project with Colombia's civil procedure group. She went into Sweden and she stayed there for 2 years. She learned Swedish and she wrote a book of comparative studies in civil procedure. And I think that was a huge moment for her as a feminist. I don't think people actually understand how important it was. She was living in the United States. She had issues getting a job, to being a woman, being hired from a law firm. And then she goes to Sweden, where you have this feminist evolution happening and women debating about the double burden of women in the house and in the work and unpaid domestic labor. And she stayed there for 2 years. And when she came back, she became a professor at Hudgens University in New Jersey. And she even started a women's law review. So you can see the impact that she had getting to know other countries and other cultures and other legal thinking. So it's great when you guys have a seminar to debate this, because you see the importance for you to understand and see the world outside your culture, because you get examples, good and bad examples. And I think Ginsburg, in the feminist side, it was a huge thing for her. It was something that really built her character and her studies. So she became a professor in Hudgens from 1963 until 1972. And from 1972 until 1980, she was a professor at Columbia Law. And she was the first woman tenured in the University of Columbia. So also, it was not very common to have a lot of women as professors. But bigger, and I think it's something that happened in between her time, was the creation of the Women's Rights Projects of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. This project changed her life, I think changed the law in the United States. And we even have felt some reflexes here in Brazil for sure. Was during that moment and with that project that she was able to do something that she wasn't able to do before, that was to become a lawyer and actually practice to become a lawyer and be a lawyer. So in that project, until the year of 74, they analyzed and attacked 300 laws related to gender discrimination. And until from 69 to the 80s, around 66% of the cases trials in the Supreme Court of the United States related to gender discrimination were under ACLU. So they were a huge association. They still are a huge association in the Trump administration. When you had the immigration issue, they're actually very strong and they're really related to civil liberties. And that project, Ginsburg was one of the co-founders. Later, she became the general counselor of the project. And with that project, they attacked several and hundred of laws related to gender discrimination in the US, but they had 6 main cases in the Supreme Court. And those cases, Ginsburg acted as a lawyer in them, and out of 6, she won 5. And differently from Brazil, in the Supreme Court of the United States, I don't know the exact number, maybe Professor Mohamed can correct me, but I think they trial around like 100 cases per year. It's not the amount that we had, yeah, roughly, right? Yeah. And so the debate, it's different. I think it's more they pick the matters differently they do here in Brazil. I think Brazil, and with with Justice Barroso here in Brazil, he's trying to move the Supreme Court from Brazil in more of a constitutional court, and having the American example. But you have very few cases, and those 5 cases that you won actually were something, because before that, when you were analyzing a law based on gender, you were using the rational basis, which is it's the lower type of scrutiny for you to analyze a law. And in the United States, you have three types. You have the rational basis, the intermediate, and the strict scrutiny. And what Ginsburg did in her moment in the SCLU is to move forward. After you had the rational basis, when the effects of the law were not based to analyze the constitutionality of it. And what happened after her moment and her period there in the ACLU was that they moved a little bit higher. They moved to the intermediate. They said that it has to be connected, the effects and the intent of the law. So you cannot simply discriminate. And related to race in the United States, they use it as strict scrutiny. And that was what Ginsburg aimed. And in a moment when she was, moving some cases in the Supreme Court, it was actually considered a strict scrutiny, but later they decided that should be the intermediate because there are some qualities that make women and men different, and you don't see that in race. So what happened, actually the first time that the Supreme Court of the United States had a case related to gender was Reed versus Reed. It was in '71, and Ginsburg, she wrote the brief of that case. And she was always, everyone always mentioned how well her job was, like her right work was good, or argument. She was always very prepared and very perfectionist and always delivered her best. So that was the first case. And there had a few cases, but I don't want to focus individually in each one because it takes a lot of times. And right, Professor, to talk about each one in 5 minutes, it's very complicated. But Reed versus Reed was the first one that related to gender discrimination. And the other one that was Kirk versus Boren, it was a case from '76, and that one was the one that applied the intermediate scrutiny, which in that case is very interesting because it was a law from Oklahoma prohibiting the selling of non-intoxicating beer, which is a 3.2% alcoholic dose in that drink, for men under 21 and for women under 18. So they had a difference of age between women and men because they considered that women are more responsible, women don't drink as much. So you can create a law that men are allowed to drink at a certain age and women in another one. And then Ginsburg arrived. And she said that those gender lines are very hurtful for the society as a whole. What she did in her CLU ethics was that she didn't pick like major cases of gender discrimination. She picked one by one, and usually she picked cases that the men also suffer from those discriminations to prove that when we're talking about gender, we're not only talking about women or men being favored. And there's this idea that those laws, they're created to protect women. And she even used a sentence from another judge that it doesn't put women on a pedestal, it puts women on cages, because you create an idea what women should be and also what men should be. So in that case, and I believe it was her fifth case in the Supreme Court, she said, hey, like, guys, no, it was something that and the thing is, she was able to show the justices how hurtful for men. And I think it's an interesting case because you had a Supreme Court formed by men, and actually selling beer, it was the moment that they said, okay, let's change this. There actually is a discrimination. So it's funny, and I see how important it is for you to actually use the right arguments with the right people. So in other cases, she picked cases where defending men, proving that, for example, men were hurtful for also gender discrimination. And she used a tactic very close to another very well-known lawyer in the United States. They also Thurgood Marshall. What Ginsburg is to gender equality, he is to racial equality in the United States. Even when Clinton appointed her for the Supreme Court, he said that she was the Thurgood Marshall for women. And that is huge, that it's major. He was the lawyer of Brown versus Board of Education, one of the most famous cases in the Supreme Court. So And when she was appointed in 92 for the Supreme Court. And another case I want to bring, and please guys, I'm just giving, you know, a very short introduction. And if you guys are interested in the topic, I recommend you to look up the cases. Once you get to, you know, get more familiar with the language, it gets easier. In the beginning, it's a little bit harder, but please look forward, read. It's very interesting. It's easy to find the decisions. There is a website that you can even research, and you can listen to the oral arguments. So it's super interesting. I'm just giving you a teaser for you guys to look up, because those cases, when I was studying my LL.M, like those cases, we take maybe 3 weeks to study. So it's just very pointing some facts to see the importance of that she had in the gender equality movement and the feminist movement in the United States. So another case, and I guess it's my favorite from her in the Supreme Court, is Virginia versus United States, which they analyzed the constitutionality of the admissions policy of the Virginia Military Institute. They only accepted men. They considered that it was a very tough institute and that demanded a lot of physical effort. So women wouldn't fit. It was not a place for women to be there. And, you know, and it would, here in Brazil, when I think about this case, I remember a lot of tropa de elite in those very, you know, stressful physical efforts and, you know, very challenging. And they said that's not appropriate for women. Women are not as tough physically for this. This is a man's job. But the thing is that some women, they were interested of having those challenges, those physical challenges. They dreamed to go to that military institute and graduated there and exceed and excel there. And so this case was brought up. Justice Ginsburg was the one that wrote the majority vote, and she recognized the violation of the 14th Amendment. And she said that that the Virginia Military Institute did not give in a persuasive justification for the policy gender-based. And I think that was something that she really tackled through her career, was this gender line: what is appropriate for men and what is appropriate for women. And I think this case, it was her biggest, like her first big case as a justice in the Supreme Court. She was able to put her voice as a justice, and she really brought up the importance of that. She said that we have to recognize and celebrate the differences, but they can never use that to restrain opportunities related to gender. And when you have this idea, this generalization of ideas, what is appropriate for each gender, you deny opportunities. So I think it's a beautiful vote. The first time I read it, I had goosebumps, and I really recommend if you're interested in American law or gender discrimination cases, it's a beautiful vote. Ginsburg had a talented with words. And another case I want to bring up, it was actually this case that she became notorious RBG. It was this case that gave her the fame of the big dissent. And, you know, I think it was her card to fame outside, you know, the legal area. It was Shelby County versus Holder that analyzed the preclearance of, and I will say that it's a very complicated thing to explain because we're dealing with the electoral system of the United States. And as Brazilians, that we have everything very organized in a federal way. In the United States, it doesn't happen that way. So Professor Mohamed, if you want to talk about that, I'll give you the word, because it's a very different way that the United States, they deal with elections. And for us as Brazilians watching, and now we're paying a lot of attention, we're going to the election race right now, it's very different. But they have this, the district, it's divided differently. They have district votings and they divide it by race. So they have this big pre-clearance that is to protect minority voting. So they design the district so you're able to sort of do a draw that you respect the race. So districts, they're more racially oriented, so you manage to have more race representation. And so they're actually analyzing pre-clearance, this design that the authorities have to see if it's being respected, the race, designing, and the Supreme Court decided that that no longer needed to happen, that they didn't no longer need the pre-clearance because that problem was being solved, and for years they have been applying, and that was, you know, that was a problem solved. And Ginsburg said she was her dissent. There was a huge dissent because she said it, and I'm going to quote her: throwing out pre-clearance when it has worked and continuing to work to stop discrimination changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. So that sentence made her became famous. Like people got her, quoted, created a blog, and she became notorious RBG, and a lot of memes happened with her head, you know, when they brought the music of Notorious Big. And then people were starting posting her as a superhero, and she became RBG after that dissent, after not agreeing with the Supreme Court, and doing in a way that actually communicated to people. And she said that the sense they communicate with future generations. So I think in that moment, she became even stronger. And when the Supreme Court became more and more conservative, she became more and more liberal. She became more and more progressive. She started shifting to a more progressive side and becoming this dissent voice. So there are other huge dissents from her, very interesting dissents that actually made a law happen. And she was a very strong position. Then, and she became a movie. She became a documentary. Also, a movie was made about her. The documentary RBG. The movie, I guess it's called Supreme in English. In Portuguese, it's the Suprema. And so she became a huge figure, but not only internet, let's say, internet phenomenon. And you can, if you go to Amazon in the United States, you can get everything you can imagine of Ginsburg. I actually have my little doll in the little corner. And she became a superstar when she was 80. And she became a superstar because she was putting herself in favor of minorities, in favor of women, in favor of disability people, in favor of same-sex marriage. So she became this person bigger than life. I think Ginsburg, even though with her passing, it was a sad, very sad moment, but in a way she was very tired. She was 87 years and she was fighting, I guess, her fourth or fifth cancer. I'm not sure. I guess it was her fourth. And so she faces a lot of challenges, and her husband died, I guess it was 10 years ago. It was really hard for her, but she kept working. She kept working. She kept open to dialogue, even though she is in the more liberal, she was in the more liberal side of the Supreme Court of the United States. She was able to talk and communicate to all other justices and have a good communication and argue her cases. Her best friend in the Supreme Court of the United States was Justina Scalia, was actually the opposite of her. And I think Professor Mohamed will explain more about the originalist and non-originalist because he's going to talk about Amy. And Amy was very related to Justice Scalia. I think she was, I'm not sure her clerk, but at least her student. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And but she was able to have that communication. She was able to talk with the people, even though she didn't agree with them, even though they didn't have the same point of view. So, and I think this is her legacy. I think she taught a lot of resilience, the importance of education, how it's important to be prepared and to don't give up. She, even though when the court was moving more and more, how do you say the word? Sorry, I just missed it. Conservative. She kept strong. She kept writing the things that she believed, and she kept her head up, and she was very committed to gender equality and to end gender discrimination. It was her project of her life. She didn't act in the project that was related to freedom of reproduction freedom that was also from the ACLU. She was only related to women's project. There was two different types of project due to financing, because Ford Foundation, that was the one financing her project, the women's project, right? He wouldn't finance cases related to abortion. So she never really worked in the abortion cases in the United States. People actually say that was really good for her, because when she was appointed to as a justice in the Supreme Court, that wasn't the cases that she was moving forward. She was moving forward gender discrimination. But she was very connected. She even wrote an article about the landmark case, Roe versus Wade. It's very interesting because she criticized the decision because she believed that the main point of the Supreme Court in Roe versus Wade was the right of privacy. And she believed that it was related to the 14th Amendment and gender discrimination, that you're prohibiting a procedure that is only needed for women. So she has a very interesting article about that, but she was never actually an advocate in that area. So these were my brief considerations about her and her trajectory as a lawyer and also as a judge. And I'm looking forward to listen to Professor Mohamed's exposition about the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cristina, for the amazing presentation. You brought so many crucial points of Ruth's career. And now we'll have Professor Mohamed Arafa presenting the subject. Did the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg agreed with Amy Coney Barret? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Louise. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the organizers for this great event. It's my second event with Unibe Law Review. The first one was Matthias, or Matt De Pera. He's a great friend of mine. He was my research assistant at Unibe when I was teaching there as a visiting professor. I've been teaching at Unibe for as 4 times, as probably you know, 4 or 5 times, which is amazing time to spend in Brazil as always. And I promise I will do it again next year, hopefully when the conditions will be much better after the pandemic. Thank you so much, Cristina, for your informative presentation. That was wonderful. I really learned a lot for the historic, great, informative presentation. That's super great. I'm also wanting to thank Fernanda for bearing with us, and arranging the whole thing. But as Cristina highlighted in her presentation, I don't think that there will going to be anybody can replace the seat for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think one of the great things when I moved from Indiana to Cornell, and I was not aware that she was a graduate of Cornell for her undergrad. I was like, wow. So I should be very proud of being at Cornell now and part of at Cornell Law School. Ruth Bader Ginsburg had a wonderful life, as Cristina mentioned, and I think it was very unfortunate, and it was one of my most fears that we will have to face that day and to have a nominee specifically to be confirmed, which I think by Trump administration, as we can see right now. But I do have some good news, which I think about the future, as Cristina mentioned, because I know that all of us are worried about the future and the balance of the court and how the Supreme Court of the United States will deal with critical issues and critical matters. Specifically when we're talking about voting rights, women's rights, reproductive rights, the rights to bear arms and all that, you know. So, and I totally understand how that is very critical to all Americans. And one of the main important thing also, even for me, is for immigrants, you know, that's very important. And we know how Ruth Bader Ginsburg have been standing with immigrants, because she was already, you know, a daughter of an immigrant to the United States. So, so we have a lot of crucial matters with regard to the replacement of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or the superstar, iconic Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And when Cristina mentioned that she met her, I was like, wow, that's super great. But I can tell you, and I'm gonna make you jealous, as on the other side, I met Justice Antonin Scalia live. I did in Louisiana in 2012. That was interesting time. I actually was doing my PhD at that time at Indiana Law School, and I get to be selected on a program, a judicial clerkship program by the law school as one of the graduate students, and they went with 2 others or 3 others, I think JD American students. I was the only graduate student at that time chosen to get to that. And then we went to the program, and one of our friends around noon, they said, you know what, there's going to be a talk by Justice Antonin Scalia in the other. I said, what? Oh, we should go to listen to that guy. We only just studying his dissents all the time. And I remember in 2007, when I was sitting in my criminal procedure law class, and I was like every time read about that. When I was in the Connecticut Law School and I was reading dissent, Justice Antonin Scalia's dissent, and it was, who is that man that is always like dissenting like that? And we have to study how he had been forming a wise decisions. However, at some point, we do not have to disagree. And I like how Cristina highlighted an important thing, because I think that reflects Ruth Bader Ginsburg legacies when she mentioned that she had been the best friend of Antonin Scalia. However, they do not disagree on the matter of the law. They do not have to disagree on the matter of the law, which is the same philosophy I hear today from a part of the confirmation hearings of Judge Barrett, I think soon to be confirmed as Justice Barrett, that she said, okay, I have been trained by Justice Antonin Scalia. I have been interning for him, clerking for him for a while. He was my mentor, his philosophy, and I'm quoting her here, his philosophy is my philosophy or is mine. But she said today, which is very interesting to me, she said, okay, even that, but you will not gonna find out that the cases will be ruled as Scalia's ruling. She said it was gonna be Justice Barrett rulings. Which means that there are good news at some point. The good thing when President Trump nominated Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, I have been very, very worried about that. One of the main things that make us worried also is the media exaggeration about Amy Coney Barrett. They try to make Barrett as a monster, that she will gonna shift the court to the most conservative perspective for decades to come. And one of the great things that I learned in the United States, that I do understand that they know and they learn how to distinct between their personal preferences and their professional decisions, specifically judges when they sit on the bench. They have this ability, which create a robust judicial independence, or the independence that we see in the judiciary, specifically in the United States. And we all in our countries, including my country, Egypt, we always lack that independence, which make our courts in a bad shape. And I liked how Cristina mentioned when she mentioned Minister Barroso. He's a great friend of mine. I do really like him a lot. I do respect him a lot. I do not have to agree with all of his decisions or all of his arguments, because I do understand that there is a kind of trend now that he's following a little political trend or something like that, which I do not like, because as even Barrett mentioned today, that courts, specifically Supreme Courts, shouldn't be a place for politics, or we should not politicize courts, specifically when you're talking about the highest court in the land. So the idea of fairness that Justice Barrett will do that, it's the same came to me when President Trump nominated Justice Neil Gorsuch. It was the same thing when they said, oh, he will do that, he will ban this. But look, one of the main things when we have to look, however, if we are interested in the president, or we do not interested in the president that already elected by the people of the country, that we have to look at the qualifications and the background of those people, specifically when we're talking about justices, that they will take in the highest seat in the land as a life appointment job. one of the main things when even people have been talking about Neil Gorsuch, they said, oh, he will be like totally ruling against LGBTQ community, for example. And it happened to us that he surprised us that he did rule in favor of them recently. And he said that there shouldn't be any kind of discrimination based on sexual orientation. You know, that's one of the main things. Even people have been like very scared about how Neil Gorsuch will rule on that. And we can also talk about climate change in the same perspective, consumer rights. I mean, because people also have been thinking how this kind of regulations will be interpreted by Neil Gorsuch. It's the same thing or the same fearness now that we feel how Justice, or to be the Justice Amy Coney Barrett, if confirmed on the Supreme Court bench, how she will rule with regard to abortion, if she will be interested in overruling Roe versus Wade, for example, which is a landmark decision in the 70s guaranteeing women rights and giving the woman her total and entire liberty or freedom to decide about her body and to decide if she wanted a pregnancy or not. And one of the main things that we have to understand that judges in the United States, they will never go like wake up and say, okay, I'm having an agenda to overturn this case. It doesn't work like that. There is a process, a long process, and cases will be always decided on challenges, have to be brought by parties. I mean, it doesn't, like people said, okay, like Justice Barrett will overturn Roe v. versus Wade. How does that come? I mean, guys, it doesn't make like sense when you said, oh, she's gonna wake up and say, okay, let's overturn. No, it doesn't work like that. So because we know the system, we have, you know, it's like the trial courts, or what we call them, the lower courts, then it's challenged to the appellate courts, and then that have to be granted the right to certiorari. And then if there is a controversial issues on that, the Supreme Court will take the case and will look at it. And even when the Supreme Court will take the case, there's a lot of proceedings that have to be done, like consolidation with the other justices. I mean, look at a lot of history, legislative history, look at the how the other precedents have been talking within the same issue. So it's not like, as people think, it will gonna be happen overnight. So it's not like that way. So one of the good things that we have to understand, Amy Coney Barrett is not, she was not a graduate of Yale Law School or Harvard Law School, and she will be the first judge that she will be, I mean, sitting on the bench from Notre Dame Law School in Indiana. Make me happy because I live in Indiana at the moment. Good. However, I teach at Indiana Law School, which I'm proud of because, as you know, even the Vice President, Mike Pence, is a graduate of that. However, I do disagree profoundly with him on a lot of things. However, I consider him as a smart lawyer, as I do. But one thing that we have to understand, even how even Barrett brought to the faculty members, like when she appointed as a law professor at Notre Dame, and how her law students have been saying about her. The Dean of Notre Dame Law School yesterday, in her opening statement, she mentioned how she had been an amazing faculty member, that she had been added when she interviewed her to join the faculty 20 years ago or something like that. And she mentioned how she had been brilliant. She won the 3 prizes, teaching prizes in the law school. We have to look also at her writings. We do not have to agree with all of her writings, for sure, but we have to make sure how scholarly she has been brilliant, because when you look at these writings, you will see that these writings have been cited in a very, very outstanding and biggest law reviews around the country. Look at, she published at Virginia Law Review, Cornell Law Review, Stanford Law Review, I mean, which is the biggest law reviews, in the country, I can say, like in the world, we do not have to agree with every single thing. Like, for example, you'll see, watch out through the day, specifically within the Democrats, we're going to bring a lot of her writings about how she criticized the Affordable Care Act that had been established under President Obama, and how she had been critical of Justice Roberts, and she said he tried to save the statute, for example, and he got beyond the plausible meaning of the act. These are like just examples for that. So, and I think one of the main things that I do really feel about her, that we have to differentiate between her at the position when she was a law professor and when she's become a justice or a judge even now on the Seventh Circuit, the appellate court. Because when you are a law professor, you have the freedom to write whatever you want. You can criticize, you can be in favor. You can talk about politics even, you can talk politically, you can say that when you are a professor, but you cannot do that when you're a judge. You cannot totally do that. You have to set aside your personal preferences. You have to set aside your religious thoughts. You have to set aside all of your things that even around your circle or whatever thing that, because your ruling at the end have to be impartial, have to be unbiased, you know. So these are main I think concerns even people are thinking about. One of the main concerns right now, when we recently have been seeing or watching that the President of the United States does not like to commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he does lose the election. And when they ask him, he never get a response. Even the vice president, he never committed to that, which is totally weird because we never had such a thing before. And the peaceful transfer of power is one of the main fundamental principles that have been set up by the constitutional norms in the United States. So he is planning for, to send this case because he is planning to see that the election will be contested. So if the whole thing will gonna end up on the Supreme Court, and I'm expecting that, to be honest. I don't think that on November 3rd, we will be able to know who will be the President of the United States, either Donald Trump or Joe Biden. I do assume that we will do like 2 weeks later or something like that, because the thing will gonna be go to the Supreme Court. One thing that they said, oh, he wanted to install Justice Barrett, or the soon-to-be Justice Barrett, because she will gonna rule in favor of Donald Trump. But one logic thing, even if we talk about law, we have to understand that she as a judge or a lawyer, she would never ever destroy her reputation, specifically for a lifetime appointment. What are you talking about? The president could go on, but she will never, because she will sit on the bench for her life. So we cannot say that she will gonna rule in favor of Trump because this is why he is nominating her, because he just heard from his people around him. So he said, okay, look, you know, Coney Barret is very conservative. She is very committed. She is loyal to the Constitution, or she is very textualist. She is very original. She will just interpret the law as it's written, and she will never ever go beyond. But when you are a judge or a justice, there are a lot of other factors will play a role in your decision. When you write your decision, it's totally different when you are a law professor writing a law article. And this is what, even for example, when people ask me, how do you think when they consult me within something like a case, and they ask, oh, you are too much academic in that. I told them, yes, because this is my job. I'm a professor. I'm not a practitioner, not a lawyer. I could give you an advice, but probably you will see my way much more academically. So this is, for example, when Coney Barret was on the faculty, and she's still even on the faculty, I think as a visiting faculty now, because of her commitment as a judge, you will see that her approach is different than her approach when she is a judge. And look, all of her colleagues, even not from Notre Dame Law School, from other law schools, including Noah Feldman, Harvard Law School professor, he published a recent op-ed on Bloomberg, and that op-ed was a kind of very controversial around like last week, because the title of the op-ed was like, Coney Barret deserves to be on the Supreme Court of the United States. And I'm not sure if you guys are already aware of who Noah Feldman is. Noah Feldman is totally one of the liberalist law professors in the country, and he's one of the biggest name in the world. And then he said that, and when it comes from a very super liberal professor, he said, I'm devastated by the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I am totally disagree with Judge Amy Coney Barrett on almost all of her judicial philosophy, for example, but I can say and confirm when they have been, I think, clerking together, he had been asking her to explain a lot of cases to him when he have or facing difficulties. He said, I remember that. That does, a lot of people are going to say, oh, they are friends. Noah Feldman is a kind of a politician at some point or something like that. It could be, but one of the main things that I can confirm that I do believe when I heard some of her responses to the questions by the Senate Judiciary Committee last night in her opening statement today, and I will continue to watch tomorrow, which is important, I do feel optimism. I do feel optimistic totally. I do not have the fear that Coney Barret, she will gonna overstrike the Affordable Care Act. She will overturn Roe v. versus Wade, and she will say, okay, let's have abortion all illegal in all of the states in the United States. It doesn't work like that, because also we have to understand that their states have a role in designing their laws. And I mean, local governments and state laws play a fundamental role in that. And Cristina knows that, and she studied about that in her LL.M. And she do know that it's up to the state at some point to do these policies. So, okay, so probably Connecticut doesn't like to have abortion. It doesn't have to be the same perspective in New York or in New Jersey or in California. So, you know, so it's up to the thing, unless the law become the law of the land, which is decided by the Supreme Court. As for example, like, you know, remember the case of same-sex marriage. We have a lot of controversial talks about that before the 2015 decision on that. And then now it's totally legal in the whole United States. Before, we have been knowing that it's legal in, for example, California. In Indiana, it wasn't, for example, even under Mike Pence when he was a governor, it wasn't. So it depends. Same with abortions, same with climate change, same with voting rights, gun rights. It's the same thing. A lot of issues have been even mentioned by the senators when they have been talking about the Second Amendment, for example, the right to bear an arm. A lot of people said, oh, she was going to strike that because of the gun violence in the United States. Of course, it's a big problem that we see the gun violence in the United States. That's a totally big thing. And we can see a lot of devastating stories from time to time about and a lot of victims regarding that issue. But that does not mean that if we nominate a justice to the Supreme Court or a judge to be a justice of the Supreme Court, that we're gonna overturn cases that related to the, delete some main principles of the Constitution. One of the main things that also I realized that people have been talking about, and this make me like a little, not really understanding it from the American people. I've been living with them for 12, 13 years, and I still, what? I do understand that. I mean, I do understand it's a free country. There is nobody can say, what is your religion? It doesn't matter if you're a Muslim. It doesn't matter if you are a Christian. It doesn't matter if you're a Jew. But when it comes to Coney Barret, it started to see how they are questioning her faith. And they are fearing, because she is a very practicing Catholic, that she will rule cases or upcoming cases to come based on her faith. And when they ask her, and one of the senator, the important senator, the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein, in 2017 confirmation hearing, she mentioned to her that dogma lives loudly within you. And that's totally, I mean, that's not the United States. Okay, I mean, we do not have religious freedom in other countries, in our countries. I saw that, I have been writing of that, I've been critical of all that all the time. But in the United States now, it's weird to question a candidate or a nominee specifically to sit or to fill a seat for the highest court in the land based on religious thought. And when she asked, she said, yes, I'm a practicing mother, but that does not mean I think that she's unfit for the job. I don't think so. I have been, as I told you, I can say, I don't like to say I'm a good practicing Muslim, but I'm a Muslim. In Brazil, even people saw it for the 4 or 5 years that I've been in Brazil. but they know how liberal I am. This is why I like me, I think. It's the same thing in the United States. People saw me, my students and stuff like that. They know how liberal I am. At the same time, I like to practice my religion, which is fine. I do it privately. I mean, it's my own thing, you know. And this is, I think, guaranteed by the United States Constitution. And I feel how robust it is. And I think probably you would not be able to see that in other countries, including the European countries, because, for example, what we hear, for example, when we're talking about Muslims, you hear this bigotry things and this bigotry perspective. Recently, I think President Emmanuel Macron, he said that I wanted to, I think enact a legislation or to propose a legislation or a piece of legislation to put a much more surveillance on mosques in Paris, because we start to realize that the Muslim communities in France wanted to change the identity of France or something like that, which is totally not true. But the idea is we do not have to fear. We just have to be optimism, I think. We do not have to agree with Amy Coney Barrett, but we do have to respect her judicial philosophy. We do have to respect her religious thoughts. We do have to respect her as a person and the mother of 7, as she mentioned. She has 7 kids, 2 adopted, though, I think from Haiti, which also reflects that she is not, as people think, that she is closed-minded to immigrants. I mean, all that reflects, give us different things we have to think about. It's not like as a person we're gonna wake up and say, oh, I'm against that and against this, because and she make it crystal clear that when I'm on the bench, I will not gonna be Justice Scalia, I will be Justice Barrett. So it's gonna be her philosophy. We don't have to agree with Brett Kavanaugh stuff. We don't have to agree with Justice Gorsuch stuff, John Roberts or Kagan or Sotomayor or whatever sitting. But the great thing, I think, at the same time, the great thing about the Supreme Court, I mean, I think in the United States, that have to get an impact on other Supreme Courts around, that you can see that all colleagues are respectable to each other for decades. However, they are appointed by a Republican president, Democratic president, it doesn't matter. So to finalize, we do not have to fear about Amy Coney Barrett. At the same time, there will never ever a replacement to fill the seat and to reflect the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We will never have an icon like that. But at the same time, I think the country have to move. We have to move forward. We have to see where we are going, and we have to see and to look forward to a bright future for the whole world, not only to the United States. But I wish all the best for the whole world. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Mohamed, for such an incredible exposition on the matter. And I'm sure the audience will believe as well it was very enlightening. And Cristina and Professor Mohamed, right now, I'd like to ask you if you both have any reminiscent matter you would like to point or discuss, any comments?
For me, I'm totally okay, totally good. I will be looking forward to any questions from the audience. I will be more than happy to respond to any questions from the audience. Even you agree with me, you disagree with me, it doesn't matter. I don't care about that. I will be more than happy to respond to questions. I'm totally open to that.
For me, I just want to say that I really enjoyed the ideas that you brought, Professor Mohamed. I agree with you, especially with this fear that people have on Amy. I think we have to wait and see. And sure. Ginsburg, she said that they asked her when it would be enough women on the Supreme Court, and she said when there would be 9. So Trump, he appointed a woman, and I think, of course, he would have appointed someone that has his same beliefs that would that his voters will be happy with. So,
you know, Cristina, on that point, I think this is the most highlight things of his presidency, the best thing of his presidency. I think he did, that he appointed a woman, and a good woman. I'm not saying it will gonna be Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but I'm saying she is a good woman. That's I think at least we have to cheer up for something that he did good. I mean, however, a lot of people know how I disagree with him. I totally disagree. I was not able to see that he will be the president of the United States at some point. But this is the only thing that I said, oh, finally, at the end of his first term, I'm not sure if he will be reelected or not. I was not going to say about my personal thing because they already known. I think that's the brightest thing that he brought to his presidency, to have somebody like with mind, with qualification. That's important to this country to move forward.
Yeah, I believe that also, and I think people. I saw a lot of women frustrated that she would end abortion in the United States, and I said, well, there are a lot of factors, especially because abortion was tested 2 years ago, I guess.
Sure, exactly.
And the stare decisis, what hold it, the stare decisis doctrine.
Sure.
So, and she already wrote it about that. So we have to wait and see.
And she mentioned.
Yes, and Justice Roberts, he is a conservative, and he voted to not overrule Roe versus Wade. So it's something that we have to wait and see. And I totally agree. When we want more women, we don't have to want more women that think about they're liberal, they're exactly like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because honestly, I don't think someone would be able to fit. But considering what Trump believes, he appointed a very prepared, a good scholar, excellent scholar.
I'm not sure if he was really, really aware of what he's doing for this nomination, because he also at some point he thought, and she mentioned that crystal clear to them, I was surprised. She said, I'm not making any commitment to the president of the United States to favor anything in his favor, or to rule to save him or to favor him. I'm crystal clear. I'm not doing any deals with this committee, with the White House, with anything, which is totally, she said, I'm a judge, I'm independent. I will rule based on the rule of law, on the Constitution, and she will do the best she can regarding the interpretation of the law. I mean, she will just see how the fact and the law are just integrating to each other, and she will do her best.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot to see. I didn't follow up the hearing yesterday, but as you mentioned, apparently she's going to be approved. It's interesting because in Obama, when Scalia died, like they didn't approve. So there was this debate that it should have been different. But honestly, considering what Trump believes, and I'm actually very happy that it's not from someone from Harvard and Yale. I think the United States, it's good to diverse a little bit, and even though it's only progressive and liberals, conservatives and liberal in the Supreme Court of the United States. So I think it's really interesting that it's someone from Notre Dame. Honestly, for me, one of the best justices, there was Oren Laurel. He's from Berkeley, so it was the Chief Justice. So I think it's good when you mingle a little bit and you have from different law schools and you represent other areas of the country. So I'm actually very interesting to see if she actually gets appointed and if she gets to go to the Supreme Court, how that's going to be. I'm actually anxious to see how the stare decisis doctrine will be applied under her.
She wrote an article, I will urge you to read, I think at Texas Law Review in 2013, I think, on that idea, Texas Law Review, and she had a very detailed, and they asked her today about that. They told her that you published a law review on that, and but you know what? I mean, for myself, I think the two things that I want to just to add for a few seconds here. One thing that I think this confirmation hearings probably will, I think, mingle and integrate back Democrats and the Republicans, because I don't think that the Democrats would be able to slow that nominee or to slow the vote or whatever, because it's specifically we still have the lame duck session after the election, so they can do that. But also, I mean, based on her qualifications, you'll not be able to do that. And to finalize with this, I think Noah Feldman here said she probably could be the best on the bench for years to come. We'll see. We will watch and see. Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's important to be someone qualified, agreeing or not agreeing with what we believe, and I think it was considering what Trump believes, considering the conservative, he would appoint a conservative, he would not appoint a liberal. Sure. So I think it was a great nominee, and let's wait. And of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg will always be missed,
Sure.
but she did her legacy, and I think this point, when we're talking about minorities, human rights, women's rights, it's important to understand as a society, as citizens, that we have also to do our part. We cannot only, she's one person, of course, she has huge power. We're not going to say she has the same power as any normal
True.
citizens in the United States, but that's the same thing. People that civil society should move forward, should be engaged in politics, not only in elections, and should put what they believe forward and talk about it. And now, if people are not happy with Trump, they have the opportunity of actually changing that.
Exactly.
So
I think so.
yeah.
They have to go and vote. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you both so much for bringing such amazing points. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our webinar today, and I would like to thank you both for accepting our invitation to this discussion. And debate and expositions such as this one are extremely important to our society.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having
I
us.
totally agree. And even more important when it comes to such a relevant matter. We'd like also to thank you both for sharing so many great reflections with us. Thank our audience as well, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Professor Mohamed. I learned a lot.
I learned a lot too. Thank you.
Thank you.